The Me generation. The age of the boomer. Selfishness and what it means for the rest of us. Several times over the past couple of years, I've made a statement that goes something like this. Boomers would destroy all life on Earth just to live 5 years longer. This is obviously inflammatory and broad on purpose. Usually, people either agree and engage or come at me with some argument about how not all boomers are selfish, blah, blah, blah. They're right, but this isn't Reddit. Their comments asking for sources, demonstrating the faults of this assertion and trying to lead me to nuance is lame and showcases the lack of ability for half the literate population to think abstractly. Of course, there is nuance to this subject. Of course, we all know dozens of boomers who are unselfish, God-fearing, wonderful people who would sacrifice themselves in an instant. My own mother and in-laws are wonderful, unselfish boomers, but we're talking about collective group action and attitude here. The systems, policies, decisions, and attitudes of the boomer generation speak for themselves. Never, in human history, has one generation been so large, rich, and self-obsessed as this group of people. Boomers have been at the helm of the world since at least the late 80s and continue to this day. Everything about how the modern world operates is the product of them. As I outlined in my previous essay, there is now an ironclad track that everyone feels they need to follow to be happy, and that track is completely self-centered and dominated by status as measured by title and/or income. The boomer life plan is truly psychotic when you write it out. 1. Work obsessively. 2. Retire. 3. Spend 15 years on permanent vacation, seeing your grandchildren 4 times a year. 4. Assisted living for 10 years. 5. Hold on for as long as possible in a nursing home. 6. Never accept death. Your average boomer sees getting drunk and golfing in the Sunbelt for 2 decades, while treating their family as they would a college buddy, as the goal of their golden years. A party, just for them, to cap off a life of hard work that was apparently all centered on their own self-fulfillment. But they are now retiring, en masse. Will the world finally be released from their stranglehold on capital, business, culture, and policy? Bad news. It's going to get worse. It will remain worse for another 30 to 40 years. You see, boomers have an incredibly unhealthy relationship with death. They fear it more than any generation before or since. I suspect that this is part of the reason for the monumental rise in cremation over burial. Ask your average boomer why they will choose this method, and the answer is always the same. They are disgusted by the thought of their dead body being inside a box in the earth, eventually decaying and being consumed by worms. If they were honest, they would say that they don't like to imagine their dead body at all. They want to force instant oblivion for their own psyche. They will go to great lengths to push all thought, thus acceptance, of their own mortality from their conscious reality. A more stark example is the way they responded to the pandemic. What everyone accepts, but was plain to many at the time, was that COVID is dangerous to the elderly and obese and, statistically, no one else. The boomer-dominated public health administrators, teachers' unions, and other aligned political blocs were the most zealous proponents of the lockdown regime. This gave us a preview of what is to come as this generation ages. These leaders were willing to sacrifice the young, essentially to the absolute limit, in order to protect themselves. They were willing to severely damage the entire society, their children and grandchildren, over a virus less dangerous to them than the common flu. Job loss, misery, childcare, learning loss, even the global economy itself was barely considered, if at all, when they felt their lives threatened. Their parents, stuffed away in nursing homes, a system and culture created by them, died alone and didn't even get funerals. The limits to their self-preservation instincts seem unlimited in retrospect. It needs to be internalized that this cohort, as a group, will do absolutely anything to guarantee itself the illusion of eternal life and material comfort. How could they not? It's the creed of their generation. The number of years for this reality to slap us in the face is measured in single digits. The oldest of the boomers is now 77 years old. The weight of their medical care will possibly be too much for the system to hold. With feeding tubes and advanced geriatric care, we're looking at decades of exploding medical costs. Don't think for a second that the hoard of capital this generation possesses will be diverted to education or addiction centers when it can be used on themselves. Most of it will be spent to the last dollar on creature comforts and remaining in suspended animation for years beyond the natural expiration date. Some may read this as harsh, as if I'm saying the will to survive should be abandoned by the elderly for the young's economic interests. I'm not saying that at all. I'm simply predicting the future, that we all know will happen. Faced with a choice between 10 years of immobility with a feeding tube and 2 years of dying peacefully in the spare bedroom of their children's home, I'd wager 80% will choose the tube. Rather than pass their home and wealth to their children, the average boomer is choosing to get top dollar for that home and bleed the bulk of their wealth to permanent vacation and life extension, however short that extension may be. This is culturally acceptable to them and most of their children, as they are the ones that built it. The system they've ushered in is built for them, by them. Never mind the pension systems they've constructed that will last just long enough for them, and them only. Never mind the financial system constructed, ensuring their enrichment at the expense of their children. They don't care. As a group, they do not care. The best you will get is tough love pep talk about how you need to make your own way. They worked hard to make their own empty empire of material comfort, and you should too, so long as it doesn't disrupt their gravy train. If you don't believe this imminent reality, just remember that old people vote and can conveniently mail that ballot in from the comfort of their assisted living facility. The cynical and power-hungry politicians of the next 2 decades will yearn for that vote. And what better way to do it than to protect entitlements of the largest voting bloc in the world? I wouldn't be surprised to see the rise of another federal system to support our aging elders, coming straight from our paychecks. Why stop now? There is no need to wait for the next pandemic to come along. The pandemic of the aging boomer is finally upon us. This is not something that can be vaccinated for. It can only be endured.